Alrighty. Well, welcome everyone. Before we begin, I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Bejigal and Gadigal people of whose land UNSW currently resides on. I'd also like to extend my respect to elders, both past, present, and emerging, and welcome any Torres Strait Islanders or Aboriginal with us today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys to Bernard Fionn, who's with us today for this career seminar. A bit about Bernard, he's an industrial design alumni who's pursued a career in financial planning. He's also currently the CEO of Fionn Strategy and Design, as well as the founder of Vinny's CEO Sleep Art. And yeah, Bernard, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks very much, Charles. Thanks for the opportunity to just share a little bit about my journey with your colleague students. It does seem just like yesterday that I was a student there at New South Wales Uni in the School of the Built Environment. My degree there is a Master of Science in Industrial Design, which I don't think that particular degree is offered in that same format at the moment, but that's just a testament to the fact that it was some time ago and things do evolve. But obviously design studies are key to what's covered at the School of the Built Environment. So I'll just take about 40 minutes or so to have a chat, and there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end. And if I'm rambling on too much, Charles might keep you on track. So I'm currently the CEO of Fionn Strategy and Design, as Charles mentioned, that is a consultancy where I focus on helping organisations through strategic planning and design thinking to improve their performance. The approach that I employ at Fionn Strategy and Design is very much team-based. If I'm working with clients, it's the client's team that I need to engage with rather than any individual. And my view is that it's only through teams that you get great results. I work with organisations to look at their strategies, but make sure that they are implemented. Because a strategic plan that's never implemented is a waste. So implementation is something I'm passionate about. And, looking at organisations' structures and processes to make sure that those strategies can be implemented. I'm certainly aware of the fact that strategies sometimes do not align with resources. So you need structures and processes in place to make sure that the strategy is achievable. Critical then also is to check progress and review those goals on an ongoing basis. So it's really about trying to impart a culture of continuous improvement into organisations through that consulting, or in fact, through any organisation that I've been involved with in various management roles in the past. So my background as a kid, I always wanted to be a car designer. I left school and had the opportunity to be an engineer. I was very keen on industrial design from those early ages, but I also wanted financial independence. So rather than do 4 years full-time of industrial design course, I took the opportunity to get paid to study and became a trainee production engineer at Crane Enfield Metals out this way in Penrith. I currently live in the lower Blue Mountains and grew up in Penrith. So I was able to start work with the local company and combine work and study. At a fairly early age 20, before my first degree was completed, I became a product designer at Sunbeam in the inner west at Campsie. And at age 24 was research and development manager of Sunbeam Appliances. So I'll talk through some of the, one of the projects that I worked on at that stage. I spent a total of 12 years at Sunbeam Victor, and that included being product engineering manager, which really focused on the new product introduction, and rounded out those 12 years with a move from a technical role into a more commercial role as customer service manager. and that included Sunbeam, Victor and Trico, which was the garden sheds manufacturing business. So after 12 years there, I started my business called Tactical Solutions, and that was a management consultancy. But I found it difficult to balance the seeking work and doing work, and I had a limited network at that stage, having worked in one place for 12 years. And I found that my skills were more in demand in a full-time role than in the consulting work. Interestingly, I had approached Siebel Furniture for consulting work, and they did not engage me. But within some months, I ended up as a research and development manager, or in fact, design and development manager at Siebel Furniture. So since then, I basically put my design career on hold, and that's part of the topic today, is how do you use design skills in another role or another profession. I put my design career on hold to feed the family, and in May 2000 became a financial planner with AMP. That started with a 10-week training course, and then continued with part-time study over 5.5 years. So 2 years as an employee. My financial planning practice, in fact, my company that was a management consulting business became a financial planning practice in about June 2002. And then over 12 years or more, I built that business and ultimately sold it to another financial planning organisation where I was manager for a couple of years, and then finally leaving the industry in 2016 and became the CEO of Blue Mountains Economic Enterprise. So again, we'll see the career progression from engineering, design, through management, including customer service, into financial planning, and then ultimately CEO of an economic development agency, which is what Blue Mountains Economic Enterprise was. I finished up there in December 2019, so less than 12 months ago. And in a sense, I'm having a sabbatical, but trying to work my way back into where my heart is, which is design. And to help me in that process, I've volunteered and still am volunteering with the Western Sydney University Solar Car team, which is very exciting and allowing me to get some great hands-on skills. I've touched on the qualifications. First degree, Bachelor of Engineering from University Technology Sydney, and that was a great combination of work and study. It was a 6-year course, the sandwich course format, which meant 6 months work and 6 months study each year. The Diploma of Financial Planning, and then continuing on to the Certified Financial Planner accreditation, and then more recently to cover the corporate governance side, I completed the Company Directors course in 2016. Touched on some of this, but along the way I got married at age 20. By age 32, Julie and I had 5 children, and really it was then a question of priorities. In my heart, I'm a designer. I'd love to be a car designer, but I also needed to feed the family. So paying the mortgage and feeding the family was a priority, and that led to some of those career decisions. So we'll focus initially on the design aspects of that career and how that's evolved as well. So in the 1980s, it was a toaster that we were designing, and it was very much a team that were working on that. So there was myself, who at that stage was probably in year 5 or 6 of my engineering degree, and a team of industrial design graduates, and a range of technicians and tradespeople. So collectively, we worked on the project, and I'll show you some images of the product shortly. But again, I just want to stress the fact that there's always a team involved. I really feel like I can't do anything on my own. I probably could if I had to, but we get better results when we work in teams and get the most out of each of the members of those teams. back then on this project, there was very much a user-centric process. It was all about the user, and we certainly were users of the product ourselves, but very interested in feedback from actual consumers. We'll then talk about another design that I worked on, and this was for my master's degree, and it was a bathroom heater demister, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about the design process in that instance. But the toaster, these images are from the Powerhouse Museum's website. I recently visited the Powerhouse Museum location that they've got at Castle Hill and saw all of these models still there on display. And you can see there a little bit of a progression. On the far right is a timber model with one component missing at the back. The next one is a very similar timber model that's been cut and shut to make it a little bit higher and a little bit longer as we developed and evolved the design. The next one looks like it's got all off-tool samples, so actual components. And then the one on the far left is a hand-built model that includes the injection mouldings were going to be polycarbonate. So the one on the far left is actually fabricated from sheet, 2mm thick sheet polycarbonate. And other sheet metal components. So it gives you a bit of an idea of the level of detail to design a product that we all take for granted, which just happens to be a toaster. This particular toaster was designed to assemble without any fasteners. So plastic components had clips and lead-ins and slides to make all of those things assemble in a particular order without the use of screws and nuts and bolts. On the left here, we can see a different timber block model. So there's that combination of aesthetics and usability, but also the components on the inside. All of these things happening all at the same time and interacting. The one on the left was a different aesthetic. But also the styling influences the manufacturing. So that was one of the designs that was considered, but was excluded as we progressed. That image there shows one of the finished products. And in my view, a very elegant design. I can't claim credit for the styling of the product. Richard Hall was the lead designer on the project. Ian Wilson was the design supervisor and then research and development manager at the time, both industrial design trained. And Richard has gone on to be Director of Innovation and Design at Breville. But this particular product, we both learnt a lot at that stage about the finessing of design. For example, the side panels on that, they're not flat, they've got about a 5 metre radius on them to make sure that when they are produced, it looks flat, it doesn't look concave. So there's a lot of detail gone into the product to make it look as good as it is. If we move on to my design project that certainly was me personally, but again, I got lots of support from the model makers, for example, at Sunbeam to help me work out how to build the model, which you'll see in a few moments. As I was doing that master's degree, I knew that I needed to do a final year project. I wanted to do something that was very practical and capable of production. One of the lecturers had really, encouraged us in choosing what to design or what to do as a major project, to consider your daily routine and identify opportunities for improvement. And I guess, one way of describing that is what annoys you about the things that you need to do in the kitchen every day, or the things that you need to do in the bathroom, or the things that you need to do in your job. They could be ideas for the creation of a new product. So in my case, being here in the Blue Mountains, the bathroom heater demister was not up to scratch in my view. I ended up with a hot head and cold legs most mornings. So I thought there was an opportunity to improve the bathroom heater demister. Writing the brief, I find, whether we're back to the toaster or in this product or any other, that it's very easy to get straight into designing, before you understand the problem. And being user-centric is really important. So user analysis, understanding the users, understanding what their issues are really important, and they feed into the design brief then. But also then, if it's going to be manufactured, designing it for manufacture is also critical. So there's a lot of research required to get the brief right before you start designing something, which then maximizes the chances of the product being a success in the marketplace. The design process certainly included a lot of physical sketching, manual sketching. Here we're just seeing a couple of concepts, whether it's a red glowing infrared tube on the left mounted above the mirror. You can see there at both ends of the product there's lights, so that it gives you lighting from both sides, which is good for shaving or applying makeup, better than a single source. And on the right, we can see that there's another concept there. Rather than being mounted on the wall above the mirror, it's mounted on the ceiling, and it would have a big black, in engineering terms, it's called a black body infrared panel. And that also highlights in that particular sketch the use of a remote control. So they're not sophisticated drawings, but they do convey the concept. Also, as then the concepts progress, there was a need to do some basic renderings to explore different physical shapes. So again, the one on the left really is, almost the minimum envelope that would fit around the essential components inside. That included a cross-flow fan and a heating element and the lights at each end. The one on the right just is a variation of that. And hopefully you can see there that it's a little bit like a separate housing that's floating above the other housing. And the air intake in that case would be around the gap between that separate housing and the main housing. So just exploring different aesthetic options. Again, the sketching skills are really important, and I need to practice to get better. But this particular sketch, you can see on one piece of paper there on the left, a range of different configurations for buttons. There's a clay model sitting in the middle. That's what the actual shape is there. That's a very dark color. That's actually a clay model. So I was able to physically handle the actual size of the unit whilst I was exploring button locations, but also remembering the technical components which are shown there in the exploded view. Right-hand side just shows another way of laying out the various button options. Looking at the main unit itself, again, you need to be cognizant of the actual technical issues of what it is we need to fit inside. You can't do the styling in isolation from the technical package. Sometimes you can as a way of innovating potentially, but ultimately all these things need to come together. So on the left is the basic layout that was early on in the design, and then as the design progressed and was locked in, I was able to complete a full general assembly, which shows all the components and specifies materials and sources for things like the cross-flow fan and the heating element. To convey the design to other people and help people understand the design, including to help with costing analysis and manufacturability analysis, I created full exploded assembly drawings. Many people have asked me what CAD system I used to do this, and the answer is these are manual drawings. I set up extensions on my drawing board, which you can actually see behind me here, and the extensions were added onto that so I could get vanishing points far into the distance to set up these drawings. So all manually done, some line work with rulers, and some of the line work's actually freehand down to the very small scale. So that shows an exploded assembly drawing of the main product on the left, and on the right a similar exploded assembly drawing of the remote control. So the remote control, in addition to the exploded assembly drawing and the general layout of that, I created a physical model. In fact, I still have that here on the shelf. So yeah, you can see there 4 images of this product that has survived pretty well over 20 plus years. It is shown there in its actual in use in the hand, located on the wall, or simply left on the bathroom vanity, which were all potential applications and uses of it. The main unit itself, you can see here, this is a timber model with some plastic components. So the vents, for example, are a piece of electrical conduit split lengthwise and then attached to make the 4 vents. I'm not happy with them. I can see that they're a little bit wobbly, but again, it conveys the overall concept very well, I think. The end components are vacuum formed translucent material, and you can see that they photograph very differently depending on the light. So that was one of the challenges in my final report, was I could do those photos on the left there, but it doesn't look as good as the photo on the right. So I got a bit of assistance. I was still pointing and shooting the camera back then, but working with aperture levels and light levels and shutter speeds to try and get the best shot to present the product. One of the things that it did teach me, I guess, is there's always an expert out there with more information than I have. So to this day, it's one of the reasons why I use professional photographers if we need photographs done. So we'll move on. You saw in the career there that I was design and development manager at Siebel Furniture. So that was very much a management role. Whilst I was at Siebel Furniture, Siebel installed over 100,000 seats into the Olympic Stadium and many, many more at different other venues. But I needed to feed my family, and working in manufacturing in Australia at the time wasn't necessarily covering all of the school fees I was paying, so I decided to become a financial planner, which was a big change, but one that had many benefits over the last 20 years. So it's been a very rich journey, and what it's done is allowed me to be the designer of the CEO Sleep Out. So we'll have a look at that, and you can see there an image. I don't have a lot of images of the event, but it's very easy to find many images online and many videos online. But this image shows you, basically it's instead of inviting CEOs to another dinner, another fundraising dinner where we wine and dine them, we invite them to sleep rough for the night under an awning in a carport or outside, you know, you can see how luxurious that is. We generously give them some cardboard, and some of them use those for mattresses, and some of them use them to provide a windbreak. They bring their own sleeping bags, and if they bring a pillow, we pick on them for being too soft. For the background on that, it was May 2000, I joined AMP, and along the way, AMP Foundation was created. And, you know, as part of big organisations' corporate social responsibility, they wanted to support charities. So as soon as I heard about that, I knew of Vinnie's for many years. I knew they did good work, and I wanted to get some of AMP's money to Vinnie's. I got involved in Vinnie's fundraising dinners then. I ended up on the organising committee for fundraising dinners. Some of those were great dinners. We had speakers like Peter Garrett, or entertainment like Arne Doe, MCs ranging from Carl Stefanovic to Maroon from Triple M, or James Valentine from the ABC. So we had really good dinners, but we raised only about $20,000 or $30,000. So the challenge was, how do you design a better dinner? So again, my approach was design thinking. You know, it's just a methodology that I apply to everything, whether it be financial planning or fundraising. How do you design a better dinner? I was on that dinner organising committee. You know, just being immersed in the problem sometimes is where you need to be able to design and innovate. So we were trying to provide entertainment, some information, some raise awareness, raise some funds. How did we raise the funds? With auction items, with silent auctions, maybe with a panel discussion. So it was really playing with all of those tried and true formulas of dinners to come up with the best dinner, you know, to be a must-do event for next year, so people would come back. But we were also innovating with other ideas. So one of those silly ideas was that wouldn't it be easier just to have a non-event instead of an event? You know, how many invites to dinners did CEOs get? Surely it'd be easier to send them an invitation to the non-event and they can just give $200 and not come. You know, they have the night off and they don't even have to ask their partner if they're available that night. So we'd explore non-events, we'd explore anti-events of some sort, whatever that might be. And in fact, that's what the CEO is a little bit. Instead of an event where we are keeping people entertained and comfortable, well, this is an anti-event in the sense that we're keeping them uncomfortable and we're not really entertaining them. But for some reason it's worked, and we'll cover that as we go through. So it was 2006 when I was immersed in that fundraising dinner problem that I uttered the words, wouldn't it be easier to have a CEO sleep out rather than a CEO dinner? So there were lots of ideas, you know, innovation, using that design thinking. You know, I talk about the fact that, you know, as designers, you sometimes have to turn things upside down and look at it from a different angle. You know, at Sunbeam and Breville and those sort of places, you know, a mix master has the motor in stationary on the bench, turning beaters, yet a stick mixer, you're actually holding the motor. So maybe sometimes you know, maybe hold the moving bit and let the still bit move. So, or just simply turn things upside down and look at it from a different angle. And that's something that absolutely happens on the night of the CEO sleep out. We turn the world upside down for a night. So, you know, by some measure, the people that are at the top of society, by incomes and prestige and status, they're quietly listening while someone who's been homeless has got the microphone and telling their story. That's turning the place upside down for the night, and it really does change people's perspectives. There were innovators in the team at Vinnie's, and again, I talk about teams. Stephen Santucci was employed by Vinnie's as a fundraiser, and he was talking about an idea called trading places. But you know, this is long before the TV show Secret Millionaire or Undercover Boss, before they existed. You know, the idea was to maybe get the federal housing minister to live on welfare for a week and have some cameras following them. We didn't have any takers for that, but ultimately we did get a few takers for the CEO sleep out. It was inspired by my children. They were already doing sleep outs. So really the only innovation is to say sleep out, CEOs, put those together. So sometimes it doesn't take much to get the innovation. There was a lot of strategic thinking though along the way, and a lot of strategic decisions to keep it true to its original simplicity. We knew who the target market were for the dinners. It was business owners and CEOs. So in February 2006, you know, why don't we just have a CEO sleep out? Well, everyone was too busy and we were busy organising a dinner. It was an idea. I thought it was a good idea, but when you think you've got a good idea, you need to check with others. So I did that. I spoke with my office manager, and she recommended that I speak with two other people, my business coach and my cousin, who was an associate director at Macquarie Bank at the time. And they also thought it was a good idea. Also then in that year, I was doing a personal development course and I needed a leadership project. So I chose the CEO Sleep Out as that project to help bring it into existence. To make that happen, I needed resources and I needed to engage other people. So you've got to be able to tell the story. You've got to be able to communicate. And some of that communication might be in writing, some of it might be in drawings, Some of it might be verbally. So, I guess part of the message there is get good at telling stories, get good at articulating what it is that you're trying to communicate to people. Because I was doing the personal development course, there was a deadline on that course. That gave me a deadline on the project. So I needed to have the project done by the end of July. Now, interestingly, not everyone who does this course finishes their project, but in trying to finish their project, they learn a hell of a lot. But I was a bit, persistent, and our project actually worked, which was good. So I needed enthusiasm of mine and others and time. I engaged through my sister. She was a school principal. I asked her if she had a Year 11 social justice group that I could work with, and she did. So I worked with the Year 11 social justice group at Mount St Benedict's College, and they all helped me make this project work in its first year in 2006. Now, interestingly, more recently, I've read a book called Making Ideas Happen, and it really describes really well that whole concept of coming up with ideas and getting them into reality. So I'd recommend that book to you. So there was the resources that I needed to help spread the word. I needed a graphic designer, and I'm not one, so I engaged a graphic designer. An advertising agency were writing copy. The team at Vinnie's, through the team at Vinnie's, we chose a date, which is winter solstice, the 21st of June, the longest night of the year, which I think sounds like a great night to have a sleep out, the longest night of the year. And we try and have it as close as possible to that night ever since. One of the key strategic issues is we don't keep it on the 21st because we want to keep it on a weeknight. And we've settled down to the Thursday night closest to the 21st of June every year. We also needed a venue. And again, through my cousin, I was able to secure the Olympic Stadium for that first event. And there were ideas and concepts to promote it. Like I say, through the advertising agency and getting copy out there. You've slept under 5 stars, now sleep under 5 million stars. So having a name for the event and some punchy lines were important. Another part of the message is prototype early. And whether it's this event or others, I've often said, I'd rather do something in 6 months rather than take 18 months to do it. And partly is I might run out of steam over 18 months and the team might run out of energy over that period. But if we get stuck in and do it quickly, then the job's done. And some of these references that I've got down the bottom there also talk about the fact of prototyping early. Make it real. And you saw earlier the timber models and the physical models. Make it real so you can actually really get proper feedback and evaluate the product. Don't ruminate over the design forever. Start building things early. Don't wait till the design is fully resolved before you make it real. Some references there, I've noted Roger Martin and Michael Shraj, who are both advocates of that philosophy. So the sleep out itself, the key impact of it has been it's given a voice to the homeless or those people who have been homeless. That first year it raised $4,500, which was a success in itself, but not a lot of money. But it was then a prototype, and it engaged people in this real event, and they were enthusiastic. They formed a committee with me to have the second event and beyond. That committee, their main focus was advocacy and promotion of the event to spread the word. This graph shows how we spread the word, and you may not be able to read all of the dollar values there, but it does add up to over $60 million over that period of time since 2006. We've just had the 15th event about 14 years later. And you'll see that the funds raised this year are lower than last year. Last year was absolutely a record year of nearly $8 million raised nationally. This year with COVID, the event had a completely different format, and people were invited to sleep in their own backyards or on their own lounge or in their own car. I know many people who slept in their own backyards and slept in their own cars. I don't know anyone who slept on their own lounge, but I'm sure some did. I think I sleep on my lounge, once every few months, so I thought I'd better get in the backyard, which I did. So it's raised an enormous amount of money. It's not just about the money, but the money is a really easy thing to remember for me, to keep track of. Well, there's a whole heap of stories around each of these. But if we look at those first few years, the third year was the hardest. We had 47 attendees in the second year, but only 35 in the third year. So the numbers dropped a bit, but I was committed to it happening on the same date. And then something happened. There was enough momentum after 3 years where some people looked like they might quit and not push through. Maybe it's not working. But we went to nearly 200 participants in year 4 and raised $620,000. And in year 5, it went national with Vinnie's in every capital city and raised $2.9 million. So the event started to inspire everyone back again. And I thank anyone who attended those early years, because everyone that attended the event inspired someone else to subsequently do it. So in 2010 was the first national event here. In 2011, it was copied in multiple countries around the world. In New Zealand, the big sleep out happened. In New York, the CEO sleep out happened with other charities over there. And it subsequently has happened in Canada, the USA, Thailand, Hawaii, UK, South Africa. So it is a worldwide movement inspired by this, started with that simple concept of how do you design a better dinner. So what skills have I learnt through all of that? And these are, I guess, getting close to the end of the formal presentation, and we'll have questions soon, but I had to get organised. Organisation is key to getting things done, and you've got to organise yourself first. So, we're all different, and some of us are more organised than others, but to get anything worthwhile done, you're going to have to get organised, and I certainly had to do that. Time management is critical. When you're doing many different things, and in my case, buying land and getting a house built and landscaping a yard and having 5 children and school events for kids, and all of the things that we've talked about have all happened concurrently. So you need time management. You need to be able to put things into compartments time-wise and get things done in those time compartments. Sometimes it's even a matter of saying, look, I don't have time for this, but I'm going to do one thing every day. And if you do one thing every day, by the end of the week, you've done 5 or 7 things, and things do progress. And if you're using a team, I find that I would need to allocate things or do what I need to do to delegate back to someone else or pass it on to someone else to do their bit. And that cycle, progressively, we get things done. But identifying people's skills and using, playing to people's strengths. So understand what people's skills are and what their interests are. I mean, obviously you'll get better results if people are doing what they like doing rather than just because they've got a skill that they don't like doing. All of these things are part of project management, but formal project management training was part of my engineering degree, and I still utilise those philosophies in every project that I'm working on, including the concept of weekly meetings at very least. And in some instances, you need daily brief meetings. Ideally, the work doesn't get done in the meeting, the work gets done between the meetings. And the meeting is really just a checkpoint to go through a list to go, right, are we on track? And an opportunity for people to communicate about what's working and what's not working. So I was going to say something else and I can't remember, so I'll move on. So that methodology I've applied across various roles. It doesn't matter whether I'm a manager, a designer, a project manager, a financial planner, the founder of the CEO Sleep Out, or a CEO of an economic development agency. There's a range of skills that I've used along the way, and some of them include the engineering and design skills. Mathematics is a key to it, analysis, the drawing, sketching, and communicating skills, I believe, are critical, and I've used across all of those roles. So I guess to consolidate that into a few points, my words of advice are to you to have a goal, but be flexible, because you won't necessarily always get your goal. In my case, I wanted to be a car designer as a kid. I've had a few diversions along the way. It turns out right at the moment I am a car designer. I'm just looking here. Here's a 3D printed solar car. This is not the top secret design, which I can't show you, but this is the one that Western Sydney University drove in the World Solar Challenge 2 years ago. But have a goal and be flexible, and you'll find some interesting things along the way. But also make sure that you're providing value. If you're a designer, make sure that you're really adding value as a designer. And in my case, as a financial planner or as a CEO, I've probably always worked a little bit harder to make sure that people are getting good value. Like I say, this year I'm having a bit of a sabbatical, bit of a rest, but it's not a complete rest because I am on 5 or 6 Zoom meetings a week at the moment with the solar car team. But make sure you're providing value. And that's all I've prepared for tonight, but I'm very happy to take questions, and I'll hand back to Charles to direct all that.
Yeah, so thanks, Bernie. It was definitely very insightful. Your entire career journey from industrial design all the way to your design and engineering-related work, all the way down to financial planning and minis. So I guess the second half of the segment will go with Q&A. I'll just share screen for some pre-prepared questions, but everyone else in this call, feel free to drop questions into the Zoom chat. So I'll just go ahead and share screen. So hopefully everyone can see this Q&A slide. So yes, as I said, if you have questions, please chuck them into the Zoom chat box, but I'll go with some pre-prepared questions. Bernie. So some commonly asked questions. Number one, what advice would you give to a student aspiring to follow a career in industrial design? And secondly, financial planning.
Wow. Yeah, they're two. They seem two very different areas, don't they?
Yes, they do.
But I've touched on one of them, and one is provide value. Make sure that what you're doing is valuable to other people. In terms of industrial design, I would say draw and practice drawing and keep practice drawing, because that is a critical communication tool and allows you to just even communicate with yourself about your various concepts. You've got to get things down on paper. And if I use that analogy with financial planning, be a good communicator. In financial planning, it's about sitting across the table from clients, and in today's environment, it's about sitting across a Zoom presentation with clients. But you've got to be able to communicate with them and tell the story. So, and sketching skills, I think it doesn't matter whether you're a lawyer, even. Learn how to draw, and it's another language, really, that you become competent in.
So to sum it up, so communication, drawing skills, and definitely adding value.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Next question. Oops. Considering the voluntary work you do at Vinnie's, would you suggest students to pursue voluntary activities, and why?
Look, I think, none of us live in isolation. We're all part of families, or we're part of communities. And I've given, one-on-one mentoring advice to different people at different times. One guy comes to mind, and he wanted to establish his career before age 40, so he could then switch on his giving back to his community. And I suggested to him, well, why can't you do it all at once? And that changed his mindset. And in his community, he's become a leader, and he's a director of volunteer organisations in his 30s, because he's been able to just, I guess, not segregate that. So there's a concept that I call work-life integration rather than work-life balance. And it was an interesting journey. When I was working at Sunbeam, Victor or Siebel Furniture, it was about 60 kilometres drive away from home. Whereas when I was doing financial planning, it allowed me to work 15 minutes from home. So I was able to integrate, when I worked for myself, financial planning, working to raise money for Vinnie's, but also having the children from my kids' school, including my own kids, involved in those fundraising dinners, for example. So they were the ushers at the event. So rather than having work, life and charity all separate, I was integrating those things. And I think it gives you a more rounded view of the world. There's no doubt you can be an absolute specialist in the architecture of wet areas in high-rise, but maybe there's some things that if you broaden your horizon, you might be inspired to achieve excellence in as well.
Because there's two dimensions to this. There's one is social impacts, and one is the skills you learn while doing voluntary activities. So would you think that students should engage with these across their university studies, or maybe after or before?
Oh, look, all the way. I know it's tough when you're studying. I can recall when I finished my first degree, people said, "So what are you doing next year?" I said, "Rehabilitating." I was completely exhausted. I had a full-time job, and I was doing, my final year thesis in engineering. I can remember consciously choosing not to read the local newspaper, because that was 15 or 20 minutes that I needed to focus on my studies. So, I'm flashing back to that and realizing it's really hard to be integrated. But there was still certain, church as an example, I used to go to church on the weekend. Well, I kept doing that. So that was at least one connection. And it probably helped keep me connected to the community. But for others, it would be sport. And I probably let sport go as well. I thought, what a luxury. I wish I had the time to do sport. But somehow you've got to keep a bit of balance. And if you don't, you might end up burnt out if you completely focus on one thing. You also talked about the skills, and I'll talk about that in my case. Here I am, 56 years of age, and I talk about the CEO sleep out. It is the gift that keeps on giving. Vinnie's call it that because, my idea was the gift to them, and we worked together to make it happen. But it keeps giving year after year. But it keeps giving back to me because it really has become my own personal development journey to just grow with the event. So an example is, at school, I was absolutely terrified of public speaking. Well, now I've got over that, and I can present to 200 CEOs in the room if I need to. Voluntary work can give you great skills enhancement.
Yeah, okay. What's the toughest challenge you faced as a student studying at uni?
My second degree, the Masters of Industrial Design, was the first time that I ever did an all-nighter. Industrial design students talked about all-nighters, but I'd managed to get first-class honours in mechanical engineering, and I can't study past 11:30 p.m. I wasn't being effective, so I'd stop. But I still found in the industrial design degree that I could sand, again, I'll pull this out. and I've got the bigger model up there, but I could sand this at 2 a.m. in the morning without thinking too much. And if I could just stay awake, I could then get another sanding in before another coat a couple of hours later. So probably the biggest challenge was just getting through the course and balancing part-time study with full-time work and a family. So I guess it is that time management issue again. You know, sometimes we're trying to cram in too many things. So the toughest challenge probably was just allocating the time that was needed to get it all done.
I guess on this point, would you be an advocate for working part-time and studying part-time?
Look, in my case, my journey has been exactly that. And I have learnt an enormous amount in the workplace whilst studying. So the two feed off each other. I think I would have learnt a lot less or less effectively if I did, 4 years full-time study and then work full-time. So it worked well. And if your work can be related to what you're studying, then that's fantastic. But I'm working with some, volunteer students on this solar car project, and it raises the issue of volunteering. So they're students at WSU, and I'm sure you've got them at New South Wales as well, but WSU students, they're volunteering in something that they love. So they're learning engineering and design skills in the solar car project. And many of them are also holding down part-time jobs. Some of them are working in Woolworths, Dan Murphy's, just to pay their own bills. But others are lucky enough to then evolve into a part-time job as a 3D computer-aided design modeler at a car customization business. So yeah, the work and study does, I think, then make you more employable as well.
I guess if you went back in time, what's something you've done differently?
Yeah, look, there's no regrets, and there's probably it's not something that I dwell on. I'm sure I've made mistakes. I probably exceeded the speed limit driving once or twice where I shouldn't have. But apart from that, there's no big ones. You've got me. I've found one, and it is make sure I make time for my health more. So that might have been doing some more exercise early on. I now meditate, exercise, and I'm more aware of what I eat. So what I would have done differently is probably learn meditation earlier in the process and embraced that. And also probably I would have eaten less hot chips and less Coke probably. I'm talking Coca-Cola. I'm lucky enough I don't drink at all alcohol. I haven't ruled it out. I just haven't started yet. So probably try and stay fit and make time to keep your health.
Yeah, sure. I guess, do you have suggestions on how students might develop their careers while navigating?
My earphones without me touching anything. So yeah, what was that, Charles?
So do you have suggestions on how students might develop their careers while navigating through the coronavirus?
Yeah, look, there is so much available online in terms of training now. So this year I was physically in the labs and workshops at Western Sydney University using their hardware and software to learn SolidWorks 3D CAD modelling system. And what COVID did was meant that I stopped going to the labs physically. I spent the money on a laptop that was better than my old one, and I'm now running SolidWorks at home. And that's allowed me to do the work, but also find tutorials and some of them are structured and some of them are just random. There's a solution to everything on YouTube. Unfortunately, sometimes two of them are wrong and one of them's right. But I've been able to use this time to use what we do have available to us to upskill. So I'd encourage people to do that. I've not done any Netflix or box sets or series. I haven't, you hear people talking about that's what they've been doing in COVID. Well, I haven't done that because I've been busy using YouTube to learn some new skills. So I'd recommend people do that.
And I guess I'll hand it over to the audience. So if you can read up the chat box, there's two questions. One from Dairov. So there's a bit of a handful, but so Dairov says, you spoke about starting early and prototyping early to maintain that enthusiasm through the project, but also being a good manager of time and resources, as life often has a way of throwing us off balance. So his question is, how do you decide what is a good step to take at such uncertain junctions beyond the basic prioritization of goals that has worked for you?
Yeah, look, part of my answer to that, I go straight to having mentors myself. So I had a business coach for 9 years throughout the CEO Sleep Out, before and during that. And that was really valuable for me to have a sounding board. I evolved that into a board of advice. So, for example, my brother is an accountant. He's 8 years older than me. So he was always my accountant. And I also had a bookkeeper in my business. So I assembled those three, business coach, accountant, and bookkeeper, into my board of advice. And I took my operations manager to a quarterly board meeting. So that was formalizing that mentorship from three people that I had a lot of respect for. But there'd be people like that, and it's really, I guess, having a sounding board. I've got other friends, where we mentor each other. And even when I could not afford that, I assembled a board of advisors where there was myself and three others, and we would take it in turns every fortnight or every month to focus on each other's business. So it's I'm trying to remember, it's a think tank sort of thing, but it's having those trusted people that you can bounce ideas off. Because if you try and make all those decisions yourself, sometimes when life throws you a curveball, you need a little bit of input from someone else just to reassure you that you're making the right decision or to help you with that decision. The other thing, life throwing you a curveball when you're really busy, we don't have time to labour over decisions sometimes if we're doing a lot of things. And you may be familiar with the decision tree. And, I can remember back to engineering, putting weightings on things, and it's a complex process in itself. But one of the philosophies is, if you've got two options, if it's an easy decision, that's good. You've made your decision and you move on. If it's a hard decision, then maybe it doesn't matter which one you take. So instead of labouring over the right decision, so instead of worrying about let's make the right decision, just make the decision and then make it right. And I guess that means if it's close and it's hard to tell, well, it doesn't matter, just choose one. And then once you've chosen, don't look back, choose it and make it right.
So I guess for the first part of the question, in regards to navigating uncertain junctions and prioritizing certain goals, you said surround yourself with mentors, have the right amount of people to bounce ideas off.
Yep.
And then I guess you also did say about, as this student has mentioned, prototyping early.
Yes.
And also going ahead with something within 6 months, but rather than waiting 6 years, for instance.
Yes.
Is it something you can elaborate on that one?
Yeah, look, I think it's about that energy thing, especially if it's a team of people.
The motivation, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking to another project that I was involved with. I was the director of an organisation called Australian Defence Force Assistance Trust, now known as Bravery Trust, and it's an organisation that helps financially with those people that have suffered a trauma or injury in the defence forces. And they wanted a fundraising idea, and I was on the board. So the idea was, well, it's not going to be another sleep out, but it needs to be something that ties in with, our Australian Defence Force. And fitness was something that came to mind that, if you look at our Defence Force versus the American Defence Force historically, they might be good at shooting guns, maybe. So what are Australians good at? Well, Australians are innovative and they're fit and they're sharp, and so fitness kept coming up. But I also wanted to link into something where there's a recurring revenue where people are spending money on a regular basis, and fitness was part of that. So the idea then was to do the Fit for Freedom Triathlon, and we wanted to do it around Anzac Day. But the idea had only come to us in about December. Well, I was absolutely keen to happen, this Anzac Day, about 5 months away rather than, 18 months away. Let's just get enthusiastic, get it together, get the specialists on the team and make it happen, rather than run out of steam halfway through. So that happened. The event was great. Unfortunately, it hasn't become a national event on an ongoing basis, but it did raise money. It did have a positive result, and it is the sort of thing that could happen again in the future. So it was a real event. It was a prototype. It happened. It raised money, and it wasn't just an idea.
I guess the final question we've got for today would be from Joanne. Joanne asks, considering the perceived massive change in your career path from a product designer to a financial planner, did you ever second guess your decision? If so, how did you stay on course?
Okay, second guess my decision. So it's a great question. And I use the terminology that I put my design career on hold to feed the family. That was the priority. I had a job to do. And at the time, I looked at financial planners, and many of them worked 4 days a week and played golf 3 days a week. Well, I thought, okay, I can do 4 days a week. Once I learn this new craft, I can do 4 days a week, and I'll go and design things 1 day a week. So I held on to that hope. It turned out to be a lot harder. The financial planning industry has changed, but it still has given me a lot over those near 20 years or 17 years that I was doing it. It ties into that other question about what regrets have I got. Well, there's none really, and I didn't second guess it, but I've also always held on to the hope that, or the realization that I am a designer. I just happened to be doing financial planning for a while. My methodology was, I was a financial architect. I would understand the clients before I designed their financial solution. I wasn't just selling financial products. I was really understanding clients. So that philosophy has gone through. The fact that it has allowed me to meet a whole bunch of people that I wouldn't have otherwise met, I'm very grateful for that. I was lucky enough to go to the Design Awards a few years ago. I was doing some part-time lecturing in design, which again, there's been some lucky things happen along the way. But partly it's, my daughter will say it's, you put it out to the universe and you manifest it and it happens. But there could be other reasons for it. But it's about having that goal, what you want, and then things fall into place. So I was able to become a lecturer at Western Sydney Uni part-time in design. So I took 1 day off a week from the financial planning, but then I worked on a Saturday to make up for it. So I'm trying to come back to the question, any second guessing. No, I'm really grateful. I was at those design awards and my old colleagues from Sunbeam were up there getting awards for Breville and for barbecues, and they'd designed some great things. And I really like these guys and they do great work. And I reflected, and really at that stage, the only thing I had designed in the previous 15 years was the Vinnie CEO Sleep Out. And that's pretty bloody good. So, you know, I've had this very rich journey. There's no regrets and the journey's not over. And, you know, there's another book that I'll recommend to everybody, and it's called The Last Lecture. And it's written by Randy Pausch, P-A-U-S-C-H. The Last Lecture, and it's really inspirational book. You can probably watch his whole talk that the book's about in 40 minutes on YouTube. And he talks about holding on to your childhood dreams. So I wanted to be a car designer, and here I am this year. That's what I'm doing with the Solar Car team.
Because Joanna just mentioned massive change. You did say in your presentation that it was really a change, but you rolled over your skills from design thinking all the way into financial planning. Do you want to quickly elaborate on that?
Yeah, look, so in May 2000, so in April 2000, I was design and development manager at Siebel Furniture. And I think it was the 1st of May 2000, I started at AMP as a financial planner. In fact, it was a 10-week training course. And that was part of a strategic decision. You know, there were other opportunities, but I went with one that was well structured and had good training. And I was part of a team of 10 in an intake of 10 into a team of 100 of financial planners from a whole range of different careers. So it wasn't just a flippant decision. It was well researched. And, you know, some people said, well, that was brave. And I said, no, it wasn't, it didn't feel brave. It just felt essential. You know, that something had to change in my case. And I could have had, well, I couldn't have less kids by that stage. I'd already, you know, I did stop eventually. I stopped at 5. But something had to change, and it was my career. So I don't know, have I answered the question on massive change or not? Help me, Charles.
Because I was just thinking, because, you know, what you learned in industrial design at UNSW, you carried that throughout your career journey. You didn't just ditch it behind and, well, 360, turn a 360 and then completely do something different in financial planning. You carried your skills across.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I say, that philosophy of working with a team to get a job done, the mindset that in this instance of financial planning, or more recently as the CEO of an economic development agency, what is it that we're trying to achieve? Which really is just that question. What is it that we're trying to design? You know, we're trying to design physical spaces. We're trying to design systems and procedures. So that design thinking really gets applied to so many things in life. And even a few years ago when at the university, they were encouraging me to do a PhD in autonomous vehicle design. When I thought about that, and I don't want to do a PhD, I don't need more qualifications, I just want some skills. But every time I started thinking about autonomous vehicle design, it would come back to the systems and procedures of how do you have traffic systems, transport systems, regulations, laws that relate to autonomous vehicles. Well, all of that is design. So politicians, policymakers, bureaucrats, in a sense, they're all doing design work. So if you're studying design and end up in one of those other careers, it won't be wasted. It will be really valuable methodology for solving problems.
Okay. We'll just wrap up this session, and thank you everyone for attending, and also thank you Bernie for presenting. And yeah, so we'll end it here. So thanks, Bernie. And thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much, Charles. We'll talk soon, eh?
Yep. So thanks, everyone.
Okay.